You think a road trip changes you until the road takes something you can't get back. Trigger warning. This video contains accounts of violence, trauma, and loss. If that could be distressing, please take care of yourself now. We collected 9 stories from people who were ordinary travelers one moment and survivors the next. Each story is a quiet thing that explodes, a playlist interrupted, a thermos left on the console, headlights in the mirror that should have been nothing. I won't dress any of it up. These are first-person accounts, the small, ordinary choices that unknowingly walked people straight into danger. Listen close. There are practical moments inside these stories that can keep you alive. If these stories matter to you, if raising awareness matters to you, tap subscribe. It helps more survivor voices reach people who need to hear them. 1. The flagged warning. Nora. We crossed into New Mexico around 9 that night. The highway swallowed the light, and the radio cut in and out between stations, the way it does when you're too far from the cities. My wife, Nora, had her sweatshirt pulled up around her neck. She'd been reading road signs like they were a map back to home, back to her sister's kitchen, the smell of cinnamon and roasting turkey for Thanksgiving. We were talking about how small everything felt when you were together in a car, like the world compressed down to the glove box and the hum of the tires. There was a pickup ahead that kept tailing us, close enough that I could tell the driver had his window down. He flashed his brights once, then twice, then pulled alongside. He was smiling, the kind of smile that felt like neighborly alarm. He pointed to our rear tire and mouthed that it was dangerous back there. It should have been enough. A kind word, a warning. We were exhausted. It was one of those nights where the inside of the car is a warm bubble and the rest of the world is a cold, flat nothing. So I slowed. We pulled to the shoulder. It was a stupid, small decision that felt right at the time. Who doesn't pull over to help or accept help on a lonely road? The man got out, walked to our passenger door, and told us our tire was shredding. Nora stood to look, leaning over. And that's when the face changed. The smile went away in a blink and something else slid into it, something careful and cold. He reached in. I still remember the sound, the little scrape of cloth, or maybe the metal of his foot against the gravel. Before I knew it, he had a knife. He didn't yell. He was precise. He struck my wife across the throat in a single terrifying motion. Time compressed and stretched at the same time. The windshield fogged with my breath. The radio was a thin hiss, and everything in front of me was sudden, loud, and distant. I fought. I don't remember all the motion, only the sensation of trying to separate myself from something that had the intent to destroy. I remember Nora's hand, her fingers curled against mine like she was anchoring us to each other. And then she was gone from me in a way I still can't explain. The man ran. He didn't drive off. He ran into the dark like he'd practiced it. I called 911 with knees shaking and the world felt very thin. The man was later arrested. His name? Boyd Driscoll. Comes up in court records and the press because he was charged, tried, and convicted. I sat through the trial on autopilot. Some things in a courtroom feel like watching someone else recount what happened to you. The verdict was life without parole. It was factual, neat, and it didn't make anything less empty. Afterward, they moved us. Friends arranged a new apartment, and a woman from the church left casseroles at our new door for weeks. I couldn't be in a car at night for a long time. I can't be now, really. The dark is a different country. The playlists we used to fight over. Nora preferred old rock. I liked talk radio. Those rhythms are now freighted. I stop before I get tired. I double-check every set of taillights behind me until I reach the glow of a city. Therapy helps in small, practical ways. Breathing exercises, grounding. A neurologist who once told me the body remembers before the mind does. The rest of it is grief that doesn't fit neatly into sentences. Safety takeaway. On lonely stretches, don't stop for strangers who flag you down. Keep driving to the nearest populated, well-lit area and call for help. If you must stop, call 911, leave your doors locked, and if someone approaches, lower your window only a crack. After Nora, every mile felt like a ledger. Every time I slow down now, I hear her voice telling me to look twice at the rearview mirror, to think of what the road might want from us. That warning sits like a stone in my throat. 2. The man who wouldn't get out. Carla. We were midway between Portland and Sacramento, driving in harsh daylight that made everything look too clean. The highway slick, the trees lit like paintings. Carla tells the story slowly, as if replaying the domestic ordinariness of it helps her stand back from the terror of how close it came. He was standing by the guardrail with a thumb up, a beat-up duffel bag at his feet, and a look that said he'd been stuck there long enough to be convincing. You take someone like that a mile or two, right? We were late, money was tight, and it felt compassionate. The man introduced himself as Greg. He had a job interview somewhere south of Redding, he said. He smelled like cigarettes and old diesel. At first he talked about work and his childhood town. His voice was chatty, the kind that fills silence and makes your passenger glance at you and smile. But when it was time to drop him, he didn't want to go. He said he'd changed his mind, sounded puzzled when we said we'd pull off at the next town. He started to make demands, small ones at first, like asking to smoke in the back seat, then to stop at a gas station. He closed up in the way someone who knows they have leverage closes up. He put his bag between him and the door and leaned back like he had a reason to stay. We tried reason, then small tricks. There was a police checkpoint ahead, and the idea of being near officers felt like a lifeline. We told him we'd pull in there, and he panicked a little, shifting in the seat. To get him out, Carla pretended the car had a problem, a fake burning smell, a worrying rattle. That worked only so far. The man was steady and too quick with his hands. When we finally managed to open the doors in the right place, he took off across a field instead of getting out to the highway. He ran like a man who had already rehearsed vanishing. Later, the police told us that the man we'd picked up matched descriptions in other reports, similar robberies and reports of coercive behavior. Whether those cases were prosecuted or led to a conviction was partially indefinido in what we were told. Not everything ferrets out into public records neatly. But the sense of being used, of turning compassion into a vulnerability, stuck with us. Carla now starts to laugh reflexively at the sight of someone with a duffel on the shoulder at the side of the road. She says the laugh sounds hollow in her own ears, like an alarm bell that never turns off. She won't pick up anyone anymore, not even in daylight. And when she drives, she keeps a full tank and a charged phone. She knows how to steer the conversation toward public populated places. Safety takeaway. Even in daylight, picking up strangers carries risk. If you do, plan how you'll exit the situation safely. Don't stop in places with no witnesses. Keep doors locked until you're in a well-lit area. And if the person becomes controlling, drive to the nearest police presence. 3. Two-lane recklessness. Corey and friends. We were all young, invincible in the way young people are. It was a storm-heavy night, and the highway was one of those two-lane stretches that unspools forever, empty except for the occasional truck. Corey was behind the wheel. We'd been drinking, not to excess, he told us later, but enough to blur the edge of judgment. Laya's playlist was on, a steady beat that made the rain fade to a rhythm. At some point, fatigue and speed braided together. There's a bright, false clarity people get when their brain is too tired to register the small signs. Corey missed the curve. We hit the guardrail. The car rolled. I remember that we laughed in a terrified way at first, the nervous, disbelieving laugh when things go completely wrong. Then a silence as the car came to a stop. In the aftermath, ambulance lights painted everything blue and red. Megan went into a coma and stayed there for weeks. Dante had compound fractures. Corey survived but required multiple surgeries, months of rehab. Laya had a traumatic brain injury that changed the way she reads a sentence. She struggles with the flow of stories now, as if the wiring in her head skipped a few bars. For the survivor who tells this, the memory is a sequence of visceral, sharp images. The sound of glass underfoot, the smell of gasoline, the way one of their friends called out a name into a night that didn't answer back. The hospital waiting room became a new geography. People learned the language of visitors and insurance forms faster than they'd expected. There was anger, too. Not the sort of righteous anger that fixes things, but a dull, resentful weight against all the small decisions that led there. "We could have stopped at the motel," someone said. "We could have switched drivers." As if hindsight could stitch together what happened. Long term, the crash didn't close like a wound. It became part of who we were. Some of us couldn't drive at night for a long time. Some couldn't be passengers without a cloak of anxiety. Relationships strained. When you're forever bound to the moment your choices hurt people, you carry a chronic sense of responsibility. Medical bills sat like constant reminders. The rehabilitation process was not heroic. It was bureaucratic appointments and small steps forward followed by setbacks. Safety takeaway: if you're tired, stop. Pull into a rest area, get a motel if you need to, switch drivers if you can. There's no dignity in pushing through a blur of fatigue for the sake of saving a few hours. The cost is too high. 4. The canyon that closed in. Patty and her husband. The canyon looked like a postcard that afternoon. Steep walls, sunlight slicing between cliffs, a narrow road that wound along a riverbed. Patty and her husband were older, retired, towing a small camper behind their Subaru. They loved the solitude of back roads, the quiet that made birdsong feel like company. They told me later that the whole thing felt like an ambush arranged by geography. The road narrowed, the shoulder thinned, and cars that seemed to appear from nowhere parked in a pattern that didn't belong to honest travelers. A pickup blocked the lane up ahead. Then another vehicle pulled across behind them. The men who got out walked with a kind of practiced calm, like they'd rehearsed the scene. Patty's husband tried to edge forward to pass, and that's when more cars cut them off. They were boxed in, a slow trap forming around them. That's how the predator patterns work. Small, coordinated moves meant to create panic and restrict options. One man got in their faces, demanding they hand over keys or get out. Patty says the anger felt like a physical thing within her husband, a hot, dangerous clarity. He rammed one of the attackers' cars to create space, then gunned the engine. They drove into a gravel pullout and scrambled away from the camper into the rocks and brush, wading through the night. From across the clearing, they watched. The men burned their camper to the ground and moved like people who'd practiced erasing evidence. In the morning, the couple walked until they found a park ranger who called the police. A suspect was later arrested. Wesley Grubb, according to the officers who investigated. He was linked to other disappearances and predatory road crimes in the region. The arrest was a technical relief. It didn't bring the Winnebago back or the sense of safety. Patty and her husband haven't taken a road trip since. The things they had planned for their golden years, the slow drives, the afternoons listening to the radio in scenic rest stops, became new, smaller rituals at home. Their social circle shrank because no one wants to be the person who asks their older friends to go on a long drive where something like that might happen again. The couple learned to pack for escape, which is an ugly phrase when it comes to memory. Important documents in a waterproof pouch at arm's reach, phones always charged, extra water and a small backpack by the door. They sleep differently now. The husband checks the locks on their doors like he's checking a car's tires. A practical repetition against an unpredictable world. Safety takeaway: when you feel boxed in, treat it like a true emergency. Create space any way you can. Ram a path if you must, and then put distance between you and threat. If you get out of your vehicle, make sure it's to a place with witnesses or to reach law enforcement. Trust your instincts about coordination. Multiple vehicles moving together is a red flag. The canyon taught them that age or caution doesn't make anyone invisible to coordinated malice. It taught them that sometimes the landscape itself conspires, curves and cliffs that favor someone planning to hunt by road. Those first 4 stories show a pattern you can feel in your bones. The ordinary small choice becomes leverage, staged kindness turns to weaponry, and the dark between exits becomes a theater for people who know how to manipulate trust. You begin to notice the motifs, the patient smile that becomes a knife, the man with the duffel bag who begs for sympathy, the exhausted driver who lets their guard down, the group of vehicles that sync up like predators. There's a rhythm to these predatory moves. tiny ruptures that widen quickly, and for every violent inflection, there's a quieter aftermath. Therapy appointments, relocation, a changed bedtime light routine. These are not dramatic arcs that resolve neatly. They are lives that continue with a new architecture of fear and safeguard. We can pause here, because the next series of stories shows how authority can be faked, how the roadside can be surveilled in ways you don't expect, and how places that look like sanctuaries can become traps. The next accounts pick up that thread. A rest area that smelled wrong, a night patrol that wasn't police, a lodge you leave before dinner because your skin tells you to. They all begin with something that seems sensible, accepting help, stopping to rest, trusting the badge of a man by the road. And they all pivot into that same ugly lesson. The road can change you in a single night. 5. The rest area that stunk of wrong. Grant. The flashlight was nailed to the trunk of an oak, its beam fixed like a cheap eye on the dark. We didn't notice at first. Late-night rest areas have that same anonymous sameness. Concrete, picnic tables, the smell of cooling engines. Grant and I pulled over because we wanted to nap for an hour, 2 at most. We were between towns. The GPS read, "No service," like a dare. The wind had the kind of scratchy sound that makes people talk quieter than normal. He went to stretch his legs and came back pale. "There's something off," he said. "Tire tracks, gloves, a jacket." We walked the strip. There were fresh tire marks in the gravel, like someone had skidded there not long before. Latex gloves lay crumpled near a drainage ditch. And then, tucked under the drop of a picnic table, a jacket slicked at the sleeve with something dark that had the metallic smell of blood. It was small evidence, a smear and a drag mark, but it folded a new geography into the place, a place that bore recent violence. We didn't know then if it was animal blood or human. We didn't know who had been there or why. There was a feeling of being watched, nothing you could name but the sudden awareness of angles. Headlights like eyes, tree lines that hid movement. A flashlight hung in the trees that didn't belong to us. Its slow sweep suggested someone was monitoring the lot. The sensible thing felt impossible. Adrenaline makes you move in the slow trudge of someone trapped in treacle. We packed and drove without turning off the engine. Later, police came and took samples. Forensic tests found human blood on the jacket. Drag marks on the grass were catalogued. Officers asked if we had seen a person, a vehicle, anything. We gave them what we could. Investigators worked the scene, took photos, and left. There was mention of other evidence at other sites in the region, but whether this particular discovery linked to a named suspect or a resolved case was indefinido in what they told us publicly. Sometimes investigations become neat cases with arrest numbers and court dates. Sometimes they become a thin file stamped with "open." The immediate aftermath stayed with me. I stopped pulling over at anonymous rest stops at night. I learned to look at the horizon like a suspect might, checking crossroads, the angle of streetlights, whether someone's headlights were parked too long at the far edge of the lot. Therapy helped with the replaying of the scene, the micro movements of our departure, but the tactile memory is stubborn. The jacket's slick fabric under my fingers in the cold would not leave me alone. Safety takeaway: rest areas aren't neutral. If something strikes you as wrong, an abandoned jacket, fresh tire tracks, a fixed light in the trees, leave. Drive to a staffed, well-lit place, a gas station, a 24-hour store, a police station. Take photos from your car if you can. Call 911, and if you're not sure, treat it like a real threat rather than idle curiosity. That night taught me a brutal lesson about curiosity on the road. Sometimes what looks like evidence of petty trouble is the edge of something that should not be probed without backup. 6. The bad badge on I-10, Garrett and the fake cop. The SUV had a light bar, but it sat crooked, like someone had bolted it on in a hurry. We thought at first it was a state trooper. The light was off, but the silhouette read like authority. We were a group of guys on I-10, a late-night bachelor party run. Garrett, Milo, Owen, Lucas, the sort of convoy where laughter and bad playlists make the miles less lonely. When it pulled behind us and then beside us, We felt the reflexive obedience people have toward a uniformed presence. Milo slowed. The car pulled us over. The man in the unmarked vehicle wore a jacket that could be mistaken for a uniform at a glance. He got out, his gait steady and practiced. He asked questions that felt like an officer's questions. Licenses, where we were headed, how many had been drinking. But there were small things wrong. The badge on his chest didn't look right when you squinted. The way he glanced at his phone as if reading instructions. The bar of light that didn't match any state pattern. He asked Milo to step out. Milo hesitated. The man was quick to press. Step out, like he was cutting the clock. Something in us clicked. Lucas whispered to Garrett that it felt staged. Garrett slowly reached for his phone and called 911, not in full voice, but enough to trace a record. A dispatcher answered, and Garrett asked the man in the jacket where his trooper ID was issued. The man bristled. He grew impatient, and that flat impatience felt dangerous. We kept the doors locked. We did not split up. We told him we'd comply only if he showed official credentials. He stepped away and spoke into his phone. We saw his eyes flick toward the SUV again, the way someone waiting for a signal looks. We were lucky. A real trooper happened to drive past, confirmed with his unit that no state trooper had been assigned to that stretch, and the unmarked SUV left. We reported it. Officers found the SUV matching our description further down the road later that night, and our report joined others. There were similar accounts of men using improvised lights and posing as officers to stop cars that matched our story. Whether any arrests were made in connection to all the reports was a matter of local investigation. Immediate arrests were not part of what the public record shared with us at the time. The aftermath for our group was a hollow silence. The bachelor party hadn't felt like a party after that. The joy tethered to a thread of unease. Milo couldn't sleep in a travel companion's house without reading the door locks. Garrett, usually brash, found himself triple-checking credentials before opening a door to a stranger. We filed a report and sent our footage to the local PD, dashcam, and phone video, because sight becomes your strongest ally. Safety takeaway. A badge or a light does not mean safety. If an officer requests you stop, you can slow down, turn on hazard lights, and call dispatch to confirm. Don't let someone separate you from your group. Keep doors locked, call 911 if you're unsure, and document plate numbers. Staying together is a powerful deterrent. That night on I-10 reminded us that a uniform can be faked as easily as a smile, and that the worst deception is the one that asks you to trust the symbols of safety. 7. The lodge with locked exits. A family who left at sundown. The place looked cozy in the listing. Exposed beams, an old-fashioned sign that promised family retreat. We have kids. Travel with small children is a choreography of snacks and car games. The family booked the roadside lodge because it was close to the campground we'd come from, and because the photos showed warm lamps and a string of porch lights. They pulled in late afternoon and found the lot half empty. An odd hush sat under the place, like a thick cloth. The receptionist was polite but distracted, the kind of distracted you give leeway to when traveling. Later, one of the children noticed that the exit doors to the hallway had locks on them. Not the standard commercial lock, but a manual deadbolt from the inside, the kind that suggested someone wanted to make leaving difficult. Belongings were shifted oddly. The family's backpacks were not where they'd left them outside. Small items gone or tucked beneath a dumpster in the back, hidden. There were noises in the walls at odd hours, footsteps when no one had come in. Staff were brusque if asked direct questions, and the phone at the desk rang and was not answered for long stretches. By sunset, the lead parent had a rising alarm that felt like a physical thing, the muscle memory of hundreds of stories where evening is when trouble consolidates. They packed the kids, left lights on in the car, and drove away before the lodge stopped being lit. The reservation listing later vanished from booking sites. The name of the place was scrubbed from a couple of travel forums. They reported the experience to local authorities, and the reports were noted, but whether any definitive criminal finding followed was indefinido. The scrubbing of the listing left them with another disorienting truth. You can be right about something, and still have it dissolve into the internet ether. That family didn't take long drives again. The kids learned to pack a go bag when they saw it practice in front of the house, a backpack with spare clothes, a flashlight, and emergency contacts. The parents speak of being watched by their own plans now, planning exits the way a pilot checks emergency routes before takeoff. They taught the children that if an adult in a place like that acts weird, leave immediately and call someone you trust. Safety takeaway. Lodging that feels locked down or isolating at odd hours is a red flag. If the exits are secured in odd ways, if staff behavior is evasive, or if belongings are misplaced, don't stay. Leave to a public, staffed location, document what you saw from your car, and notify local law enforcement. Trust the small internal alarms. They can be the only thing that gets you out before darkness does. The lodge showed that shelters can become traps when the atmosphere changes, and the people on site seem unwilling or unable to explain why. 8. The circling pickup, Logan. When a car breaks down, every other vehicle is a possible godsend. Logan's engine coughed and died on a rural stretch of two-lane road in the middle of the day. The sun made glare on the pavement, and the radio cut to a low hiss. He was a safe, capable driver who knew how to change a tire. He had called a tow. But while he waited, a dark pickup started to circle. It passed slowly, then again. Then it slowed across the shoulder like a neighbor worrying. The driver offered help, and that offer got louder with each pass. Logan accepted, reluctantly. The truck's driver had the rehearsed charm of someone who had done this before. "I can get you going, friend," he said. His help felt almost professional. But as the truck lingered and as the man made two specific suggestions, "Let's move the car over here," the situation tightened. Logan's friend watched the way the man's eyes flicked to the glove box, to the pockets, to where valuables might sit. A pattern in local news later filled the blanks. Similar robberies in the area. Victims reporting a dark pickup that circled a disabled car and then returned to take items while the driver accepted help. Logan ended up keeping doors locked and windows only cracked, and when the truck attempted a final pass to check on him, a passing highway patrol driver intervened. The pickup left when its light faded in the distance. Local police later ran a bulletin. A few days after, a match to the truck was found in 3 other reports. Arrests were not immediately announced to the community in a tidy press release. In some areas, these things wedge into lists of open cases that slog through procedures. The important thing for Logan wasn't the legal end, but the feeling that the road's kindness had been repurposed into a technique for theft, and worse. Logan now carries a roadside kit and a portable phone charger in the trunk, and has made a simple rule. Wait inside the car with the doors locked, unless you can be certain the help is official, or that there's a witness. If someone offers to help, he recommends directing them to call the towing service or police, rather than letting them approach the vehicle. He learned to note license plates before talking to strangers, and to stay near visible traffic. Small changes, but they made all the difference. Safety takeaway. When stranded, stay inside the vehicle with doors locked and windows up. If someone offers help and you feel uneasy, ask them to call the tow or police instead. Observe and memorize plate numbers, and call 911 if the behavior seems rehearsed or predatory. The pattern of a vehicle that circles and lingers is not casual. It's a tactic. The truck that circled Logan was a reminder that help can be rehearsed, that kindness can be a performance, and that boundaries, sometimes as simple as staying inside with the doors locked, can save you a life. 9. The detour that became a trap, Mason and the convoy. We trusted the GPS until we didn't. What was supposed to be a 20-minute detour around roadwork turned into 30 miles of gravel that ate at the tires and the map. Mason, Riley, and Logan were in a small group of 3 cars. It began as ordinary frustration. One narrow farm road, then another. Then headlights began to appear behind them, 3 at first, then more, matching the pace and the pattern of our lane. The other vehicles moved in a way that felt choreographed, 2 abreast, a tail car that slowed when we braked, a lead car that nudged forward to close space on our exits. The headlights' rhythm felt like a language telling us not to stop. The convoy technique is subtle. Our group saw it as a pressure, an invisible hand pushing us into choices. Headlight flashes synchronized into a semaphore without words. When we tried to pull over to consult a map, 2 cars blocked the shoulder. When we considered calling the sheriff from the side of the road, one of the cars pulled in front, forcing us onto a narrower dirt path. The intention seemed to be to herd, to corral, to make the alternative places to stop feel less safe. One moment stands out. We stopped briefly to check a broken tire, and a figure from a gravel truck approached with an offering that was part practical. "Come on, we can help," and part menace. It was a pressure that works like layers of a closing door. Small gestures, then more force. But our group did something instinctive and, in retrospect, wise. We decided as a unit not to pull apart. Mason kept the most sober head and took charge. Headlights on, hazard lights blinking, a loud honk every 10 seconds to announce we were not acquiescing. Riley used air horn bursts to create disturbance. The convoy technique relies on compliance. Noise and refusal break that spell. We didn't sleep well for nights after. The psychological aftershock of being funneled matters in a different way than a one-off predator. We replayed the route, the way the cars boxed the edges, the way pressure could be applied without a weapon being visible. We filed a report once we reached cell service. Deputies recorded the event and said similar patterns had been reported. There was no immediate arrest credited to our report. The sheriff told us rural crimes often require connecting dots across many reports. Our escape back to the highway felt like winning a small private lottery. Safety takeaway. On detours and rural reroutes, watch how other vehicles behave. If multiple cars move in concert, treat it as coordinated and do not allow yourself to be isolated. Stay together if you're in a group. Use horns, lights, and noise to disrupt the psychological pressure. Drive to the nearest populated place or law enforcement presence, rather than letting the road funnel you into unfamiliar lanes. That convoy showed a technique designed to weaponize the road itself, headlights, rhythm, and social pressure. We drove away, but a part of us stayed behind on those gravel shoulders. Closing. The long road home. 9 stories, 9 ordinary decisions that became templates of violence, cunning, and slow unmooring. They are not stories designed to make you paranoid. They are accounts meant to reorient the way you carry yourself when you leave a safe place and cross into the vast, often indifferent geography of highways and byways. Across these accounts, a pattern emerges. Predators use choreography more than chance, staged kindness, rehearsed authority, coordinated vehicles, the artifice of loneliness. The aftermath is never tidy. Some of these stories ended in arrests and convictions. Boyd Driscoll's trial is on public record. Wesley Grubb's arrest was part of a larger investigation. In other cases, the trail goes cold and the file sits under open or indefinido, while survivors live with the missing closure. The legal outcomes matter, but they don't stitch back the lives unraveled by a single night. Survivors carry practical losses. Cars burned, campers taken, clothing gone, but also internal losses that do not make checklists. A lost sense of safety, nights filled with phantom sounds, relationships that alter under the weight of what happened. Some move towns, some sell cars they associate with a memory, some attend therapy, others find small personal rituals that allow them to sleep. All of them rework their road rules. They keep full tanks, charged phones, and emergency kits. They prefer lit, staffed places. They refuse to split from their group. They call before they stop. They learn to treat styling, a badge, a smile, a rusty light bar, as potentially a performance. So here's what to carry with you when you drive into the dark or the uncertain. First, your default on the road should be precaution, not suspicion. Precaution asks you to plan. Keep your phone charged and a power bank handy. Note the nearest populated exit, and don't assume help must look a certain way. Second, trust small alarms. That gut tightening when a lodge feels wrong or when someone's charm skews rehearsed is information, not a flaw. Third, preserve distance on lonely stretches. If someone flags you down, call 911 and drive to the nearest lit area rather than stopping. If you're stranded, stay in the car with doors locked and ask passers-by to call help. If someone posing as authority asks you to step away from your vehicle, verify with dispatch first. Fourth, travel in numbers when possible and coordinate leaders. Keep headlights on and make noise to break psychological pressure. Fifth, document and report. Plate numbers, photos from your car, dashcam footage. These are the threads investigators can use. Lastly, invest in your aftercare. Seek counseling if you're shaken, join a support group, and let friends and family hold you while you navigate the slow work of recovery. If one thing holds through all 9 of these accounts, it's that routine choices can be leveraged into crisis by people who study the road's weak points. That knowledge is not a secret to hoard. It's a set of small behaviors that can be taught, repeated, and spread. If any of these stories touched you, or if you have a road experience that taught you a hard lesson, please share it in the comments below. Your practical insight could help someone else make a safer decision. If you want more survivor-centered, safety-focused stories, there's a playlist linked that goes deeper into how to prepare and respond on the road. Drive with care. Keep your lights on. Remember the faces and playlists and thermoses that make a trip ordinary, because those small domestic things are what predatory people count on. And finally, the road can change you. Sometimes it returns what it took, sometimes it doesn't. But you can carry back the knowledge that keeps other people safe. Stay alert. Keep others in the car with you when you can, and when the highway whispers, listen to the part of you that knows to turn the wheel toward light.